The next way to tap into EF Core's pipeline is through a feature called interceptors. If you used EF6, be aware that this feature is almost the same as it was back then, though it went missing in the first few versions of EF Core, but it's in here now. I like how interceptors are described in the docs. They enable interception, modification, and/or suppression of EF Core operations. This includes low-level database operations such as executing a command, as well as higher-level operations such as calls to save changes. I'll focus on the database operation interception, which I find the most interesting, to get a feel for how this feature works. The database operations you can intercept are commands, connections, and transactions. And for each, there are a number of points at which you can intrude on the operation. For example, just before EF Core is about to send the command to the database, giving you a chance to modify the command if you'd like. Another point is just after the database has executed the command. You can capture command failures as they're returned from the database, and just as EF Core is about to dispose the DB data reader that it created to capture any results, you can tap into that as well. For connections, you can access them just as they're being opened or closed, and if a connection fails. And those expose all kinds of details that you can interact with. And the transaction interceptor also exposes a number of points within its operation that you can view or manipulate. EF Core 7 brought us a slew of new interceptors. Here's a list of those, and one that I want to call out is the materialization interceptor. If you've been using EF Core since the old days of Entity Framework, you might remember the ability to tap into the pipeline when an object was materialized as a result of a query. It was really nice to see this very useful capability return to EF Core. To use an interceptor, you first need to define an interceptor class, which inherits from one of those base interceptor classes. Then you implement the logic within any of those events that are exposed. Here's a class I've ingeniously named myInterceptor, which inherits from the DB command interceptor. I'm overriding its reader executing method, which gives me access to the command, its event data, and an interception result object. Notice that the method returns that result. If you're just modifying or doing work on the command, you do need to return that incoming result because it lets EF Core continue processing the command. But you can also return a new instance of interception result in a state such that it will cause the command to stop processing. Once the interceptor is defined, you need to register it with the DB context as part of the options builder configurations, and you do that with the add interceptors method. You can use add interceptors directly in your DB context class, or if you're using ASP.NET Core, in the add DB context method. You can register multiple interceptors at once as a list in the add interceptors parameter. And notice that I'm not just saying what type of interceptor, I'm creating a new instance of my interceptor. Also note that the interceptor has no impact on the data model, so it doesn't require migration. You've just seen quite a few ways to tap into EF Core's pipeline, and unlike the logging, which can tell you a lot about what's happening in the workflow, the events and interceptors and virtual methods allow you to affect its behavior or even the data that's going into the database or what's being returned. When you're focused on the save changes pipeline, whether it's through overriding the save changes method, wiring up event handlers, or intercepting the events, the change tracker entries is an important method as it returns the details of the data that the context is tracking. You saw me modify those details by setting the value of a last updated shadow property, which became part of the SQL command sent to the database. While I've shown you some basic interaction with each of these features, I do want to be sure you understand the importance of learning more about these various patterns to make sure you don't create unexpected side effects. Testing, of course, is important, but there are also more advanced resources that can share deeper expertise as well. And with that, we have reached the end of Entity Framework Core Fundamentals. It's been a pleasure to create this course and share this information with you, as I've been researching and using and teaching about Entity Framework and Entity Framework Core since its inception. And I've been so proud of my friends at Microsoft and many contributors in the community for the great work they continue to do on this framework. And I'm so happy to show off their work. Thank you very much for joining me. Of course, here are some last resources relevant to this particular module. I'm Julie Loren, and enjoy your EF Core journey with all of your new knowledge.